Fit to Love, episode 168, How to Properly Do an Elimination Diet.
Fit to Love is physical, emotional, and spiritual fitness to achieve the happy life you deserve. From exercise to cooking, relationships, and spirituality, you'll find all the inspiration you need right here with our host, JJ Flizanes.
Hello and welcome to Fit to Love Thoughtful Thursdays. Today's show, How to Properly Do an Elimination Diet. Today's show is on a Thursday because it's about strategy. I sort of wrestled with whether or not this needed to be on a Wednesday or even on a Tuesday. I didn't know if video was the right method for this, but I think because it's strategy, it's going to be on today, Thoughtful Thursday. So let's first start off by defining what an elimination diet is. An elimination diet is just what it sounds like. You're eliminating something, one or several foods, in attempts to see how it reacts in your body. In order to see how it reacts in your body, you need to eliminate it for a little while and give your body time to acclimate, maybe release some water or inflammation or heal your digestive system, and then you add the food back in to see what kind of response you get. Elimination diets are often used to identify food sensitivities in somebody. Now I need to pause and define food sensitivity versus food allergy. A lot of people mix these two concepts up. They think, well, I'm not allergic to dairy or gluten or sugar because I eat it all the time, and therefore I don't have a big reaction and I'm not allergic. So allergic is a much stronger reaction to something than a sensitivity. An allergy is something that you know pretty quickly because, again, you're going to swell up, or get blotchy face or have itchy rash. You're going to have a very immediate response to an allergy. We are not talking about allergies today on this show. Elimination diets are not for allergies. However, of course, if you know you have an allergy, the likelihood of you eating that food again is probably not very high. I remember when my father had a reaction to eating shrimp or some kind of seafood, and he's never had it since because you have such a strong response to it that you never want to touch it again because you don't want to relive that. A sensitivity is something where the body doesn't have the proper enzymes to break it down. It's too large to be broken down properly. It isn't something our bodies digest well and therefore cause a little bit of tearing in your gut. A sensitivity is cumulative. It's a compounding effect. It's something that happens over time, and the symptoms are not normally very noticeable because it's something you probably are living with or attribute to something else. If you've been listening to this show for any length of time, you may have heard me talk about my own gluten sensitivity. Back when I was getting married, I wanted to do some kind of detox program, and I wanted to do heavy metal, because I had those mercury fillings in my teeth, and I had tested for mercury, and I had pretty high levels, and high levels of mercury can lead to Alzheimer's and other degenerative diseases. So obviously I wanted to get those out, and I wanted to get the mercury out of my body. But long story short, I sent away for this mercury detox and gave myself 2 months to do it before the wedding in case my skin broke out or something weird happened. I just wanted to make sure that I was clear and clean for pictures. And obviously just because I was getting married. Well, maybe it was because of where I was living. It didn't end up coming to me in the right amount of time. In fact, I don't even think I ever got it before the wedding, whether it was stolen or it got delivered to the wrong address. I'm not sure, but I was left with, oh my God, what am I going to do? I want to do something because I was mentally prepared to do something. And at that point, that was 2008, I'd heard a lot. Gluten was becoming more and more talked about in terms of it being inflammatory and people having sensitivity to it. So I thought, well, why not? And at this point, I had nothing to lose, so I went out and I did what I needed to do to prepare, and within the first 10 days, I lost 6 pounds. Now, that was 6 pounds of water, not 6 pounds of fat, and hopefully if you've listened or watched any of the shows, what we really want to be losing is fat. Obviously, if you're holding on to and retaining water, we don't want to keep that, but we don't want to become dehydrated, but that wasn't what that was. For me, every time I would end up around my cycle, I would have what I considered was menstrual bloating. I just thought, well, I'm bloated. So that's part of what happens when it's this time of the month. And what I realized is that, no, that's not what happens. That's what happens when I eat gluten. So it was a real eye-opener for me. And so gluten was the first thing I eliminated out of my diet. And then my mother followed and did the same thing. And her weight loss wasn't as fast, but it absolutely happened over time. I think she lost 7 or 8 pounds over maybe 2 or 3 months. And part of that was obviously getting rid of starchy carbohydrates. But why you want to consider elimination diet isn't necessarily for the weight loss. I mean, that's a side benefit, but it's also just for your digestive system and your immunity. 80% of your immunity happens in your gut. And if your body is not able to break things down, then you're going to start seeing things like rashes and eczema and itchy skin, dry skin, constipation, congestion, phlegm, maybe even aches and pains in your body. These are things that you're not going to attribute to food unless you take it out and let your body heal. So how I like to recommend that people do elimination diets is this way. And it's a couple different steps that you're going to need to take. Number one, if you have any of the symptoms that I just mentioned, and I'll tell you that dairy is usually the culprit for when you're blowing your nose and you have a lot of mucus or drainage or phlegm or constipation. That's eczema also is usually dairy, some kind of skin condition. In fact, I'm working at a company right now, and I'm working with a bunch of the ladies in the company, and one of them, she's been dairy-free for a few weeks and's lost almost 10 pounds, and she said it's so easy, I just gave up dairy. And it's because, everybody, we're not meant to be eating dairy. Now, I understand it's yummy. It tastes good. I was a cheeseaholic. I would not give up dairy for many, many years. It took a couple years of me really getting tired of blowing my nose and knowing full well that it was coming from dairy to do this. So I can speak from experience when I tell you that there is a proper way to do an elimination diet. And the reason why a lot of people don't last and it doesn't work out is because you think it's all or nothing, you don't prepare, you get frustrated and think it's about lack and limitation, you feel restricted, and of course you're not going to do it. And of course you're not going to even want to try it because the thought of it brings up fear and discomfort about, oh my God, what am I going to eat? I've been there. I understand. I ate a lot of cheese. But in order to do it properly, you first want to look at what it is that you're eating, what your comfort foods are, what your go-to snacks are, and replace them with a dairy-free or gluten-free option. So for me, I'm going to recommend that when you do an elimination diet, you start with the main two culprits, which are gluten and dairy. And I would recommend that you do both of them at the same time. Here is why. If you are sensitive to dairy, and I am sensitive to both dairy and gluten, by the way, I didn't have a huge weight loss from giving up dairy. I just had a clear nose and I wasn't producing as much mucus and I had better digestion. But I had weight loss from gluten. And doing them together, because they're both inflammatory, regardless if you're sensitive or highly sensitive or not, they are both inflammatory foods. That means that they're hard for your body to break down. So what happens is in your digestive tract, those large proteins, like in cow protein, right? Cows are bigger than we are and they're built differently. And the dairy is meant for the calf, not the human. So, and I like to scare people in my talks when I ask them how many people in the room are mothers and how many of those mothers gave their breast milk to the cat. Right? I know it's gross and you probably don't appreciate it, but it gives you a really clear picture of that the milk from the cow is meant for the calf, not for the human. So anyway, I would recommend giving up both dairy and gluten because of the inflammatory response to both of them. And then give yourself about 30 days. I would say no less than 2 weeks and shoot for 4 weeks, but somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks of gluten and dairy free. Now you're probably thinking, especially if you eat a lot of both of them, oh my God, what am I going to eat? So here's what I'm recommending. You're going to start by making a list of all of your favorite foods that are gluten and dairy that you eat on a daily basis and a weekly basis. Now, the things that you're doing for the month, you can give up because you might not even make a month. You maybe just do 3 weeks. But I would make that list of things that your go-to things. And then if you want to take it a step further, which I think would be a great idea, make a list of what you normally eat just in general. What are your normal 3 breakfast choices? What are your 3 normal lunch choices? What are your 3 normal snack choices? And what is your 3 normal dinner and dessert choices? Because then when you have a picture of what it is that your choices normally are and how you're going to replace things, sometimes rather than just replacing, let's say, gluten-free bread on a sandwich at lunchtime, because quite frankly, unless you're baking it, there's a lot of gluten-free bread that's great as toast, but it's not great for sandwiches. So rather than just replacing the ingredient or the item, you can come up with completely different lunch choices that don't even require bread at all, that may be as satisfactory to you. So maybe it's a rotisserie chicken salad, or maybe it's tuna salad on a bed of greens, or maybe it's a soup, or maybe it's an egg bake with avocado on greens. So anyway, I would recommend that these are the two lists that you start with, and I'm going to review them again. The first list are your go-to dairy and gluten-free items that you eat on a daily basis and on a weekly basis. And then the next list is going to be what do you normally eat? This in itself can give you some insight, because some of you will say, well, I really don't eat a lot of dairy. In fact, I've had someone tell me this directly to my face, that their child doesn't eat a lot of dairy, yet in the same breath, I was told that the child eats yogurt so quickly they can't keep it in the house. We forget what's in our food because we identify dairy as milk. So if you're not drinking milk, you may think, well, I don't drink milk. But you may have cheese, you may have cream in your coffee, you may have ice cream, you may have sour cream, you may have cream cheese, you may have ice cream occasionally. So we have to look at the ingredients that are in the foods that you're eating, not just the food itself. Make sense? Okay, so I have a few other recommendations on how to properly do an elimination diet. But first, we do need to take a moment and thank our sponsors. Do you love listening to audiobooks? Or do you think you'd read more if you could listen to them? Well, for you listeners, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. With over 150,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. To download your free audiobook today, go to fit2lovebook.com. That's FIT2LOVE book.com to get your free audiobook with your free 30-day trial to Audible. If you're unhappy with your trial and you don't want to continue, you get to cancel before the 30 days are over and keep your free audiobook. It is 100% risk-free. So go to fit2lovebook.com. That's FIT2LOVEBOOK.com to get your free audiobook today. Want even more up-to-date recipes, product reviews, exercises, and mental stimulation? You can find step-by-step articles from top-notch experts on invisiblefitness.com/blog. If you're busy like me, you may want the convenience of having these articles mailed directly to your inbox every month. So be sure to register your name and email at the top of the page so we can make sure you don't miss anything. Again, that's invisiblefitness.com/blog, INVISIBLEFITNESS.com/blog. Okay, now that you have your two lists, let's go to the first list. The list of your dairy and gluten-free items that you eat on a daily basis and on a weekly basis. And I would recommend that you take a trip to the store, a Whole Foods or Sprouts or some kind of natural market, and look for those items as replacements. And even before you start this elimination, this is where the homework comes in. And I have to tell you, when I started the dairy-free, I really did some research for the dairy-free because I also wanted to be dairy-free and soy-free. And I still to this day, well, of course, because I'm still dairy-free mostly, I use and love so many of the products I was introduced to. At the same time, I also gave up a few foods that I didn't really need. For instance, yogurt. There are dairy-free yogurts. They taste fine, but they're full of sugar and there's no protein in them. And a lot of people are eating yogurt, like Greek yogurt, for the protein. So in order to change out that yogurt, I would not recommend jumping from a Greek yogurt to a dairy-free almond yogurt or coconut-based yogurt because there's no protein in there. So this is part of the meal planning that you want to do in advance. But you want to test out these foods and find something you like. There's nothing worse than going through an elimination diet and not enjoying what it is you're replacing it with. So it's going to cost you a little bit of money up front, but I promise you, you will find some new, interesting things that you never would have found otherwise if you don't try this. And if you want some recommendations, I absolutely would love to give you some. So this show is full of all kinds of gluten and dairy-free things on Tasty Tuesdays. We talk about it on Wellness Wednesdays. You can write a comment below this show or come on over to fittolove.tv and leave a comment. I'd love to hear. And if you have any questions, I'd love to guide you. I've been doing this for a long time, and I'd rather you not buy something that is really bad, because your first attempt at doing this could turn you off and have you just decide that it's all bad. When I started this in 2008, Trader Joe's really only had one kind of gluten-free bread, and it was brown rice bread. And it was as hard as a rock. And while I ate it, nobody loved it. It was okay. It was palatable. You could put peanut butter on it or some butter or some jelly. You didn't make a sandwich out of it. It was really, really heavy. Maybe you put an egg on it. But I mean, now I'm paleo, so I'm not eating really any of that very much. But I wouldn't want you to go out and get something that didn't taste good. I'd want to help you with that. So please, 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 if you have no other resource, it's free. Come on over to the site. I'd love to help you. I actually just cooked a paleo dinner for clients in Arizona, and that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this show today, is to help them with an elimination diet. Because prior to cooking dinner for them, a paleo dinner, I think that people still get this, I don't know what I'm going to eat. And the I'm not so sure about this whole thing. But here's the thing, guys. You can't be sure until you try it. You'll have no idea. You can be skeptical. I was skeptical of wheat causing problems in the body for years, probably 10 years. I think 10 years. The first time I ever heard about it, I thought that was ridiculous because I didn't have any huge symptoms. But until I tried it and I felt what my body was like and how I lost some weight and I had more energy. And for some people, it's a transformative experience. Like I said, some women that I'm working with right now in a company, I mean, they just gave up dairy, barely added some exercise, and have lost close to 10 pounds. So you might be surprised what happens. So now that you've gone to the store and you've replaced your gluten and dairy-free items, you're going to try them and make sure you like them. And then you're going to schedule this. You're going to actually look in your book and see when this is possible. You're going to pick 2 weeks at least that don't have too many parties or birthdays or celebrations or things where you're going to feel restricted. It's not going to be possible to, I don't think, do a whole month and, of course, never go out. But it's about having a plan. Create the plan. Say, well, what can I have? And again, if you need help with that, come on over to the site. I'd love to help you with that because navigating through restaurants isn't as hard as you think. And there's a lot of foods that we forget about that are as delicious as some of the foods you're going to be taking out for a little while. So for instance, one of the main ingredients of salads, really yummy, decadent salads, is cheese, is feta cheese. But instead of getting feta cheese, I'll get avocado. So you can replace the creaminess of cheese with things like guacamole or avocado. You can replace coconut cream is one of my favorite replacements for a lot of things. When it comes to protein powder, I'm a big fan of the Sun Warrior Raw Vegan Protein as a replacement if you're vegan for the health benefits of it being raw. However, my favorite brand for taste is J. Rob's Egg White Protein because that's paleo. So the other thing to watch out for on a elimination diet is that you overeat things that, let's say, could have you gain weight. Probably about 2 years after I went gluten-free, I was leading women through a gluten-free elimination diet. And what they did, because I didn't warn them of this ahead of time, was they took all their fun foods, cookies, breads, pastas, cakes, and they got gluten-free. And they ate them. So what ended up happening is that they gained weight. And they gained weight because they were eating more sugar, more starch, more calories of foods that are not nutritionally beneficial than they would have been otherwise. But so like in the fat-free realm, when we had that whole fat-free craze, people, fat-free doesn't mean calorie-free. Fat-free doesn't mean sugar-free, and sugar in the bloodstream and too much of it turns to adipose tissue, which is fat. So we have to look at this as if you're just replacing the things that you're normally eating. It's not a green light to overeat new things that are full of starch and sugar that will cause you to gain weight. So depending on why you're doing this elimination diet, if it's just to see what happens, or if it's to lose some weight, then it's not about necessarily restriction, but replacing things in the same way that you would if you were eating the real, quote unquote, real thing. So these are my recommendations on how to properly do an elimination diet because, again, the first resistance you're going to have, I know, I understand, is fear. What am I going to eat? Because you don't know. And what a wonderful opportunity to learn about new foods. I love learning about new foods. When someone introduces me to something that I don't know about, I get really excited, which is why I have this show, so I can share it with you. I've been playing with cauliflower pizza crust for a year. And I've tried different recipes. I don't do it all the time. I'm not obsessive. But, every so often I'll get an inkling that I want to try it. Or I'll hear somebody on Facebook that's done it really well. Or there's a new recipe that somebody has. And so this past weekend, I literally made 2 of them because I want to have a certain consistency. And I wanted to play with different ingredients. And I think I found my recipe, right? But until you try it, you have no idea. And sometimes these things, paleo pizza, I talked about going to Scottsdale and to Arizona, and one of my very favorite gluten-free restaurants, shout out to Picasso's, is Picasso's Pizzeria. They've got pizza, pasta, all kinds of appetizers, dessert. Picasso's is a gluten-free restaurant. I love them. I love their pizza crust. I will come back with 10 bags of gluten-free dough every time I go out there. Except this last time, I did not do that. And my husband asked me why. And I said, because I'm over it. Because we now make paleo pizza. And actually, I like it better. I love knowing that it's not going to spike my insulin. I love knowing that while it might not be less calories, it's less insulin spiking and therefore less blood sugar in my blood and less likely to turn into fat on my body. But not 100%. Still, calories are still calories. And if you're using them or storing them is still going to be the same debate. But at least this way, there's not a huge surge of insulin in my bloodstream. So I feel better about having paleo pizza with the paleo pizza crust, which I will be making on a Tasty Tuesday next time we film. So give me a few months and you will see a paleo pizza crust. But I'll give you a hint. If you watch the paleo cheese bread, it's pretty much the same recipe, just adjusted a little bit. So paleo cheese bread, episode 148 on a Tasty Tuesday. I definitely invite you to check that out. It's yummy. They're amazing. You won't miss bread because it is bread. It's warm and crusty and on the outside and chewy and yummy. And anyway, so I love food. I love food. I love food. I am Greek and Italian. So trust me when I tell you, if I can do this, you can do this. And I can help you. So if you have any questions, please definitely send me an email, info@invisiblefitness.com, or write, better yet, underneath this video, come to fittolove.tv, and let me know what you thought. Or if there's some foods or advice that you have for others because you've already done this, then I'd love for you to share that too. The more the merrier. If you know somebody who wants to do an elimination diet, I highly recommend that you share this show with them so they have a little bit of more information about what to expect and why they'd want to do it. And then at the end of your elimination, you're going to add 1 food back in and see how you respond to it. I would not add everything back in because you won't know what it was that was either causing the bloating or the weight gain or the water retention or the eczema or the headaches or the runny nose or the constipation. So I'd recommend you add 1 in for a week, like one day, like on a Monday, add in your dairy, your favorite dairy, whether it be yogurt or milk or whatever, and see what happens. And then let a week go by and then add in your gluten the following week. You're going to see that there's a response, I promise, of some kind. Doesn't mean you're going to stick with it forever. It's just so that you know that maybe in the future, when you eat one of these foods, there might be a need to make sure you've taken your probiotics for the day, and maybe you've even had some digestive enzymes, even more specific digestive enzymes that help with gluten or dairy when you eat these foods, so that way your body can break them down as best as possible and have less symptoms of all the things I've talked about. So I hope you've enjoyed today's show. I wish you the best of luck on your elimination diet. You can make it fun, make it exploratory. It's not forever, and you always have the power to eat whatever it is that you want, and you can do this. It's 2 weeks, and if nothing, it's 4 weeks, and it can be fun, and you may have a life-changing experience. let me know.
Looking for an engaging and inspiring speaker? Does your group need a good jolt of positive thinking? Look no further than JJ Flizanes. Visit her site to check out her most requested topics and video examples. jjflizanes.com. That's jjflizanes.com.
The Fit to Love podcast show offers you 6 days a week of helpful content to achieve the happy life you deserve. Movement Mondays and Tasty Tuesdays are weekly videocasts, while Wellness Wednesdays, Thoughtful Thursdays, Freedom Fridays, and Sexy Saturdays are audio-only shows themed every week to address your holistic life and needs. If the show inspired you, we would love for you to share it and subscribe. Thank you so much for joining us today. Head on over to fittolove.tv for recaps of every show, resources, and to join the community. That's FIT, the number 2, LOVE.TV. Have a fit and fabulous day.